This city still very much in shock after the unthinkable happens. Dozens of bloody bullets and a death count at 12 after a midday massacre in midtown Atlanta. Police now toiling, trying to figure out what sparked a bloody shooting rampage through 2 Atlanta office buildings. The tragic events begin when a 44-year-old day trader walks into a brokerage office in northern Atlanta. Mark Barton, after a casual conversation with employees, opens fire. He then escapes, crosses the street to another firm, and shoots again, leaving behind another bloodbath.
And they were doing CPR, and he was bleeding all over the place. It was really horrific. Everybody was scared. We didn't know what to do. We were confused. Eventually, the cops came up and told us to evacuate the building.
I heard the security guard say, "I think somebody's been shot." So I went in our office, and I said, "Man, I think somebody's been shot." I saw the pool of blood inside the leasing office.
Employees believe Barton had done business with one of the brokerages before. The shooter reportedly irate over financial losses. But police still can't pinpoint what provoked the attack. Barton also linked to 3 other deaths in an Atlanta suburb. Bodies believed to be those of his wife and 2 children. Police think they were killed before Thursday's office shootings. SWAT teams hunting both buildings, floor by floor, find no one. Raising roadblocks, searching cars, and rerouting rush hour traffic turns up nothing. Then a break. The manhunt ends as Barton is pulled over and fatally shoots himself in his van.
This brings this very tragic day to an end. We are continuing to identify the victims and beginning the process of notifying the families. I don't know if any of us can understand why something like this occurs. All we're able to do is to comfort the families and, of course, pray for our city.
The crime scenes are still secure, and all Friday, investigators are expected to try and put together the pieces of this puzzle and answer the question why. In Atlanta, I'm Chris Kimura reporting.
Family members scrambled into Grady Hospital this afternoon, most unable to conceal their panic at what they might find. Earlier, one by one, ambulances had whisked the wounded up to the emergency room, and officers had followed, with the hopes of questioning some.
I think at this point, they're still slightly in some degree of shock from the whole incident. Really, we've been trying to confine our questions to some of the medical-related concerns.
For at least 5 of the 7 wounded brought here, things were critical. One man with a head wound was rushed to surgery, and another with gunshots to the face, chest, and shoulder quickly followed. They would eventually be joined by 2 more men, one with wounds to the chest and leg, and the other shot in the chest and back. A 5th man with a chest wound went to intensive care. The gunshot wounds of a 6th man and a woman are not as serious. They are listed in good condition. Of course, there is never a good time for such things, but Grady was at peak staff when the victims came.
Fortunately, things occurred at shift change, so we had extra attending-level physicians, multiple residents from all of our services, as well as our trauma surgeons, so we were ready.
Throughout supper time and on into the early evening, the victims' family members continued to hustle up to Grady's ER, some escorted by police, many visibly shaken.
The cops got in there and they hustled us out.
I walked out of my office, and the office directly next to ours, there was blood on the floor.
They said, everyone get out, had us all hunker down and run out of the building.
And there was cops running down the halls, saying, get back in your office, and saw a guy laying there. There was a puddle of blood, blood on the walls.
The first call came shortly before 3 o'clock. A man later identified as 44-year-old Mark Barton opened fire on his colleagues after exchanging conversation. He moved from one building to another. Before it was over, 9 people would be dead, 12 others injured, 7 by gunshot from Burton's 2 guns. The building was surrounded and cordoned off. Overhead, helicopters searched for the suspect. By late afternoon, we are given a name and picture and a description of the vehicle he is driving, a van. But Burton had left the scene. While employees are slowly evacuated from the building, the SWAT team moves in, meticulously going floor to floor, looking for a man they considered armed and dangerous. But by 8:30 this evening, more than 5 hours after the bloodshed began, blood was spilled again, this time at a Cobb County gas station.
He had made comments to the extent that it was a bad trading day and something to the effect that it was going to get worse.
Atlanta Police Chief Beverly Harvard recounts the chilling words of a mass killer just minutes before he opened fire in these two Buckhead financial offices. Chief Harvard says Mark Barton gave no real warning before firing off 40 shots with a Colt 45 and a 9mm Glock in two different offices. He killed 9, shot 7 more, and sent dozens fleeing to the streets in a panic.
I was horrified. I was totally devastated and horrified.
Atlanta Police, there's a shooting at 3500 Piedmont Road on the 3rd floor, suite 300.
Within 4 minutes of the first 911 call, police were at the scene. Half a dozen agencies worked side by side, searching car by car and floor by floor of the two office buildings in Buckhead.
Law enforcement community really came together yesterday and did a great job. They had a Herculean task of trying to search all those buildings, to search out where this man was.
Harvard recounted the horrifying discovery that Mark Barton's family had been murdered in Stockbridge. And then, some 5 hours after it all began, a suicide, a single shot from a Colt 45, bringing an end to the trail of murder, but offering no real answers to the motive.
And so yesterday was a horrible tragedy, tragic day in the city.
This photo gives a picture of what looks like a happy family. But Mark Barton, shown here with his children and his wife Leanne, had split. In this letter, police read he partly blames those problems as his reason for killing her, first on Tuesday night. Then it describes how he murdered his 11-year-old son Matthew and 8-year-old daughter Elizabeth Michelle.
I hit them with a hammer in their sleep and then put them face down in the bathtub to make sure they did not wake up in pain, to make sure they were dead. I'm so sorry.
Barton talks of being in, quote, pain since October and hating this life and its systems. He writes he forced himself to kill the children so they would not later suffer with no family. Notes were left on each body. Of the Buckhead killings and his death, he wrote,
I don't plan to live very much longer, just long enough to kill as many of the people that greedily sought my destruction. There is no excuse, no good reason. I am sure no one will understand. If they could, I wouldn't want them to.
A grisly confession from beyond the grave as Georgia authorities reveal the contents of the suicide note Mark Barton left with the bodies of his wife and 2 children. A note that detailed his plans to open fire at 2 Atlanta brokerage firms.
I don't plan to live very much longer, just long enough to kill as many of the people that greedily sought my destruction.
The suicide note provides new clues about what might have been in the mind of the 44-year-old father, investor, and former murder suspect who opened fire in the 2 Atlanta buildings. Some questions may never be answered because Barton shot himself as police closed in on him. Authorities later find the bludgeoned bodies of his wife and 2 children at the family home. Barton apparently angry about his stock market losses, angry enough to commit one of the worst workplace massacres in the nation's history. 9 people killed, 12 others injured, some by bullets, others by their frantic attempts to get out alive.
We do have some individuals who were shot in the head, a few chest injuries, at least 1 arm injury, and a few back injuries.
The shooting rampage and ensuing manhunt stunned the city of 3 million and quickly captured national attention. Why it happened may never be known as Atlanta's mayor begins to bring his city back together.
I don't know if any of us can understand why something like this occurs. All we're able to do is to comfort the families and, of course, pray for our city. That's all the information that we have at this time.
The first bodies were starting to come out of the buildings. The medical examiner had been inside an hour and a half. Sitting around the perimeter was the FBI SWAT team. Inside was Atlanta's SWAT team, the Red Dog unit, and Zone 3 officers. They were all searching the buildings, still looking for Mark Barton.
I think it's a horrible way.
Jump back to 1993 and this comment and a scene from a campground murder in Alabama. This is 50 miles from Rome, Georgia. Mark Barton's wife, Deborah Spivey, was murdered along with her mother, Eloise. Barton was interviewed at the camping trailer at the time, but said he was in Georgia. Mark Barton was a suspect, but no one was ever charged. Police at the time said the two women knew their killer.
As soon as I peeped in, I saw the lady had a hole in the right side of her head.
Jumping forward again to Buckhead, people poured out of the office park after being trapped inside for hours while police looked for a mass murderer.
How soon did you hear the police after you heard the gunman?
Very soon. Very soon. About 5, within 5 minutes.
Yes.
I mean, very, very soon.
I'm Dana Fowle, Fox 5 News.
It only cost 25 cents, a hardcover book of James Herriot's tales, but inside a personal inscription from husband to wife. For my dearest Deborah, may we experience each of life's many joys together. Yours, Mark, July 1986. Mark is Mark Barton, whose life seemed without joy or even simple peace of mind for many months. The same Mark Barton police now say opened fire inside 2 Buckhead office buildings, bludgeoned his second wife and 2 children, and shot himself to death. Deborah, in the note, is his first wife, murdered 5 years ago.
You can't really get away from it, There's little reminders all over the house and the yard, soccer balls in the backyard.
Paula Hudson now lives in the home Barton shared for 6 years with his family. Her mom bought the book at the Bartons' moving sale a few weeks back.
They were real happy that morning. I'm thinking the little girl was out there in her gown, helping carry stuff. They acted like they were happy to be moving.
But Walker's husband made an even more disturbing discovery in the bushes just this afternoon. A note police would like to see. The words appear to read, "My dad is crazy." Crazy is spelled incorrectly, and no one knows who wrote it or when. It was found near some small teacups and other toys.
Just to see little remnants laying around like that, it really makes you wonder, how their lives were.
The Barton children's lives ended in this Stockbridge apartment, their new home.
It makes you scared to be in your own home, but people want to run away from it, but you can't really run away from things like this.
As property managers keep a tight lid on access to the apartment, police keep a close watch, trying to keep gawkers away.
Why would you want to see something like that? I think to myself.
Especially when the flowers and the notes at the door serve as reminders of the death of the family that had just moved in. In Henry County, Nicole Smith, Fox 5 News.
1 week ago, terror struck this same Buckhead corner. Office workers scrambled out of 2 Security Center and Piedmont Center. A crazy man was killing, and it was a man many of them knew. Day trader, 44-year-old Mark Barton.
There are 7 patients, 3 that are critical and currently in the operating room, another 4 that are deemed serious right now.
It was a bleak day for Atlanta. Police tell me $100,000 in debt to one day trading company. Barton went inside to settle up. He didn't leave any money, only 40 bullets and 9 dead, numerous others injured. For hours, there was panic. No one knew where Barton was. Was he in a position to be a sniper? Finally, hours later, his van was cornered in Cobb County. Barton committed suicide.
I don't know if any of us can understand why something like this occurs.
On him were weapons ATF says he may have stolen from his father-in-law, Bill Spivey. Ironic, Spivey had been used again by a man he never trusted. It was 1993. Bill Spivey's wife and his daughter were murdered at an Alabama campsite. Son-in-law Barton was the suspect, although he was never charged. What's worse, last Thursday, Henry County Police found Spivey's 2 grandchildren murdered by Barton, along with his second wife, who was also dead. And there was a letter admitting to it all. By the end of Thursday night, 12 were dead at the hands of a smiling Mark Barton, and at least 2 others in a hospital just hanging on to life.
Doctors actually are not telling anything at all. They keep saying that they don't know anything and they can't give us any prognosis right now.